something that I forgot to show you earlier. It has to do with attachments. This is the one we worked on earlier. And Fern attached a budget detail worksheet, then she forwarded it to Charlotte. Charlotte's looking at it. If she realizes perhaps that this attachment isn't the correct one, it's the wrong quarter, or they want to redo it or something, this little symbol right here is a garbage can. And that's how you would delete this attachment off of this quarterly report. You would just click on the garbage can. Now it has a little garbage can. And save or finish. And that attachment is now gone.
Did you do that again?
Well, it's gone now. So let me attach another one.
Okay.
So you go back into attachments. And you see it here.
Oh, it's already there.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then you just click the little garbage can
Cool.
and click save or finish. And it goes away.
Thanks for people.
Sure, no problem. So I have more paper. This is something we were going to talk about earlier on the agenda, and we kind of skipped over it, and I'm not going to spend very much time. What this is the manager approval steps, which I created a one-page document. A lot of times the people that are attending training are the preparers and not necessarily the approvers. A lot of managers, supervisors or whatever don't come to the training, but they still need to know how to get into OPTIS, review a document, and submit it. So that's what this is. It's something you could actually hand to your manager, supervisor, approver person.
Thanks. Take that.
And it gives them the steps that they would need to do to get into OPTIS. So it says obtain your OPTIS username and password, and we would give that to them. And then it tells them how to log in, and this is the actual production site here, and there's 4 steps to get in there. And then it tells them to go to the welcome screen, and this is all things you already know, but go to my documents, document search. Section 5 is 3 different ways to search for a document depending on if it's been forwarded to you or not, and that type of thing. And then 6 just tells them how to review it and then how to submit it. So this is just something a handy thing that you could give if you're in that situation where you're here at the training but your supervisor isn't, and they're the person that would be approving documents. Any questions about that? And then I wanted to just do a quick review from yesterday before we completely forget it and before we move on to reimbursement requests. So this is just a list of kind of reminders, and it could be things I forgot to mention, so this is also helpful for me to make sure I cover all my bases. But remember that old forms are obsolete once you start using OPTIS, so you don't use the old reimbursement request form, the old quarterly report form. But you do still need to use the budget detail worksheet, fill it out separately, and then attach it. The documented in-kind contribution form is no longer required. I'm not sure if any of you even are using that, but that's an obsolete document. This is kind of important. We will only take action on a document that you created if it's completed. So make sure that you double check, especially with a reimbursement request, well, either document, that it does show that open book and that it's a completed document. Until it has that, it'll just sit there. We won't look at it. As soon as it's completed, especially a reimbursement request, the corresponding payment request is generated and ends up in Francine and Jenny's queue, and then they can act on it. But as long as it's still incomplete, we don't know anything about it. And some agencies actually like to start their quarterly reports in the middle of the quarter, and they just leave it open and work on it as they have time or whatever. So we don't go in and look at any incomplete documents that you have there. That's all yours. It's only until they're completed that we would take action or look at them. So just remember that. There's a couple people in here where the hierarchy and how things are set up is not the way it needs to be, and we'll work with you, call, email, we'll work with you after this training to get that all set up right in production. If you want someone to view documents, they have to be a registered user. If you want them to create documents, they have to be validated for e-response. And if you want them to submit a document, they have to be validated for e-response and also be assigned that key. So that's just kind of a reminder of the sort of the 3 categories of users. Make sure you check your assets, compare them with that report we gave you yesterday, and clean any errors up so that when you go to do your reimbursement or your quarterly report in OPTIS for real, they're pulling correctly and you have everything you need to report on.
When you go into not the training one with the live one, you're able to go in and fix those assets? No.
All you can do is view them.
View them and then email Jenny.
Right.
Got it.
She gets to do all the work.
It makes me feel special.
You are special.
Thank you.
We're working on some APR instructions to put on our website right now, but if you go to look at instructions on how to do a quarterly report, it's all about the manual and there's nothing in there about OPTIS. I am writing this right now, a section to go in there that'll have all the OPTIS steps and how to do that. So it's kind of outdated and I'm sorry about that, but we're going to get that on the website soon. And if you need to amend any document that you have completed, you have to call or email us and ask us to reopen it and forward it back to you, and then you can work on it. For a while, we would just ask you, oh, what did you need to fix? And we would just reopen it and fix it for you. But that's not a very good trail of, who did what and everything. So our policy now is if you have a problem that you need to reopen something that's completed, just let us know and we'll reopen it and send it back to you. And then that'll show in the workflow history that you did complete it, but then we forwarded it back to you and then you completed it again. So that keeps everything nice and clean. So any questions about those little reminders and things? Okay.
I have just one addition.
Yes, please.
That if what you're doing is a revision to, say, a budget detail worksheet, because your grant manager has said, hey, you need to fix these numbers, then they really like it if you save that as a second attachment as a revised budget detail worksheet. For 2 reasons.
Okay.
One is it shows the history of what happened, but second, and sometimes more important, is if they're waiting for it to show up and they're checking OPTIS for it, and it looks like the exact same attachment that used to be there before, they might miss it and hold up your reimbursement. So they just like to have it be a second one that says revised budget detail worksheet, so they can tell that something new has happened.
To you just attach it as document number, well, the second one down, just call it revised
Exactly.
and send it again.
Or could they just delete the old one and put the new one?
The grant managers are asking us
They
not to
don't
do
want
that.
Oh. And that's what you
Because
just
they're
said.
saying that they get confused about
Okay.
whether a revised
Yeah.
one has been attached or not.
Okay.
And they'll look at it and say, oh, this is the same, and it turns out it's not the same.
Okay, good to know. Okay. That just keeps it clear in it, and you can attach, as
So-
many as you need, so.
I'm sorry. In line with what you suggested, if we haven't submitted the report yet, why would it matter?
If you haven't submitted it yet, it wouldn't matter.
It doesn't
This would be
matter.
if we're reopening it because you're editing it.
Oh, I see. If you were gonna send it back to us, then I see that.
Exactly.
Good.
Exactly.
Thank you, Jen. So who wants to do reimbursement requests?
It's the most important part.
I know. Let's get to the money, right? So this is section 9 in your binder, starting on page 86, where it says creating a reimbursement request.
You want my checking account number so you can make the
That is so funny. And I'm going to do a demonstration real quick.
And we'll
here.
see you on KATU News.
Look for my picture.
And some other stations.
Is it KATU? No, you would know. From where I am. It's KATU at home.
So I will create a reimbursement request as Charlotte, and
Stop it.
so you go to create documents, create reimbursement request, and you choose the biennium. I'm going to use 0911. Click on next. Then it gives you a list of all your open grant agreements. If there is no radio button, you can't select it, obviously. And that's usually because the grant agreement is being amended, or it could be that your grant agreement is closed. if it has a radio button, obviously you can select it. The check mark just means that there have been previous reimbursement requests against this grant agreement. So I can tell by looking at this that, and especially since there's a version number on here, that this is probably being revised. This one I've never requested reimbursement against before, and this one I have. So I'll just leave it on this, and you can deselect these. Somebody just told me that it's called a radio button because the old cars, if you change the station, when you pushed one in, the one that was currently on popped back out. And it's like, oh, that's brilliant. Anyway, so then we go to next. And this is just a screen kind of telling you your I don't know what this discipline is. I think this is a holdover from Orpin and the procurement method. Some things we probably still need to clean up, but it's just telling you what the sub-grant agreement is and that it's for Charlotte's Web Transit. So you click create, and it's saying, okay, now the reimbursement request has been started. It's been assigned a number. From this point on, you could go back and search for it using either one of those numbers. So it's kind of a good idea sometimes to write that down, the number. And again, we're doing 0911 biennium, so it starts with that, and then the 4 OPTIS assigned digits after that. And then you click on continue. And it brings up the first wizard. There are 2 wizards, and the first part that we just did is kind of setting up the document, basic information on the document. Then there's a wizard, this wizard, where you're going to select the activity, and then there's other steps too, so that you'll see as we go through here. So the first step of this particular wizard is just, again, telling you what the number is. And you say thanks a lot,
That's
and you go on.
different than the control number at the top, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And information, it wants today's date for the document date, and it, for some reason, this screen auto-populates that for you. That's fine. The title, I believe, pulls from the project header or something like that. It's just something that we already have set up in OPTIS, so you just leave that. And then you need to choose the period for which you're requesting reimbursement. And I want to make sure I select a quarter that already has a quarterly report on file. So I think I'll do kind of an earlier one. Let's see. I'll do quarter 6. There's a checkbox here that says, is this the last request for this sub-grant agreement? This is optional. What this does is if you select this, it kind of starts a clock going in the background saying that pretty soon we'll be closing this grant. I don't know if it sets the planned closure date. It might in OPTIS, which isn't a hard and fast thing. It's just kind of a reminder for us that this grant is getting near to closing. And then you click next. Here's the comment field, and this would be a good place just to talk to a program manager, or if you had to say something like, I don't know what other things might people put in here.
Sometimes it'll be, like if there are invoices that look really similar, you might say, the invoice number blah is for the radio and invoice number blah is for the handsets, or, something like that.
Okay.
Just clarification stuff.
Perfect. And that's optional. And then here's where you would select the activity. So this happens to be a preventive maintenance grant. There's only one activity. A lot of your grants have more than one. Like you have the bus purchase and the PM on one grant. And so you have to indicate which activity you're seeking reimbursement for. And I think that correlates. I don't have one that's actually filled out. I think on the old RRFs, doesn't it have the different, I can't remember, it has the different activities on here, so
It
that's
does.
kind of how it correlates.
It does.
It does, okay. So I'm going to click the one there because that's the only one. Click on next. Okay, so here's the attachment screen for the reimbursement request, and it functions just like the one for the quarterly report does. This is where you would attach your PM worksheet, say. or you had some invoices that were required. And I'm just going to put the same one in there. And the same thing, sometimes for reimbursement requests, you might have many, many, many attachments. This works just like some of the other fields where if you're at the last one and you need some more boxes, just put your cursor in the last one and hit return and you'll get 6 more fields so you can keep on attaching things. And then you say finish. So now the first few steps that I did kind of set this top part up. And then I started with the wizard, which is like from here down. Here's the comment that I added, the fiscal period that I chose. Here's the item number that I chose. And it's set up the basic document. There are 2 more steps. You have to record your expense and you have to record the match on this particular agreement. So go into record expense first. There are 4 different types of expenses that OPTIS tracks. So this would be capital. And you could just put quarter, I already forgot what quarter I chose. I'll just put PM, preventive maintenance. If you are attaching receipts or any attachments, you can click on this. You don't have to, but it kind of helps us so that we can look at the front page of the reimbursement request and know that something's attached without having to go open the attachments and look to see if there's something there. It's an optional field. And then the date here is for everything but capital should be the last day of the quarter. So I chose quarter 6. So this would be November or December 31st, 2010.
You said everything but capital?
Well, she's in the old planning.
Oh,
Okay. Yes.
And yours
And
is,
I'll tell you what you do with capital just a second.
okay.
So you put the last day of the quarter. Oh, and this isn't, see, that's
That's why I was asking, because you have capital.
You're talking about vehicle assets
Yeah,
specifically.
that was a bad example. Preventive maintenance isn't a capital purchase, so that's really hard. We write the agreements that way so you get the capital match rate, but it's not a capital item that you're purchasing. So PM isn't really capital. I mean, that's the truth.
Wouldn't it be operating or no?
No,
but we always choose capital for PM.
that's because it's a
on the
capital
same-
match rate.
It's a capital grant, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how to do this because it'll confuse you either way. Let's just say it's operating,
Actually, I've seen PM.
but this isn't an operating grant. But anyway,
You can understand that.
okay. So you put for everything but capital purchases, you put the last day of the quarter, and then you put your total expenses here. If it was a capital item, this is where the date needs to be the date you received the asset. So the date you took possession of a bus, the date that
It was put into service.
put into
isn't it?
service.
Which was on that letter.
It's the date you receive it.
I think it's the date you receive the
It
item,
is?
not goes into service.
The date
Yeah.
you put into service goes in the asset register. So the date you receive
Okay.
it goes on the reimbursement request.
What'd you say?
Okay.
Date the last, if it's not capital.
Anything but
capital.
capital,
Last day of
it's
the
the
quarter.
last day of the
Okay.
quarter.
Okay.
And
Because
we're-
that's the last date that you had expenses of that type. And then for capital, it's when you took
Received it.
possession of the
Okay.
capital item. And preventive maintenance is just a weird one. So then for total expenses, you put in just that. You put in not what you're expecting to be reimbursed, but the total expenses that you had for the quarter. So let's say it's $1,500 or something. And then if you had more than one item, you could choose it and continue going down and add more fields if you need, just like the other. And then you say submit return. So now here's what I just chose, and it's showing up here. And it's recorded just the expense amount. Now I have to go in and indicate some information about the match. So I click on match expense. OPTIS calculates the match the reimbursement request for you based on how the grant agreement is written. So it knows that if you have this much in expenses, this is what your allowable reimbursement would be. The step you have to do here, and it's this tiny little 0 with an underline. This is a link. You have to click on that to tell us about the match. What we want to know here is the source. So it's expecting you to have $300 in match, and it wants you to tell OPTIS where you got the match. So I'm just going to leave it at local because it is local, and put the $300 in there.
What if it was 2 different sources of match?
You would put one of them here, and then you would put whatever the rest of it's here, and then put a description here. Mhm. Okay, so then you submit return, and now that 0 has turned to the 300 that you just entered, and reimbursement requested and match have to equal the total expenses, and OPTIS will error out if those aren't correct. And then you say submit return, and now that shows here. So it shows there's 0 for other, and there's 300 for local, and that you're expecting to be reimbursed $1,200. Okay? And then you're done. So you would, yes?
You also could have gone separately into match expense to do the match thing as well.
I don't understand.
Never mind.
I did go to match expense.
Yeah, okay, never mind.
Okay. Complete the step, and it's just like the other one. So looky here. Missing providers periodic report for quarter 6. This is exactly what you'll see if you are trying to request reimbursement for a period where the quarterly report isn't in. And that's because we didn't finish it when I was doing quarter 6. We didn't finish it, so it says it's missing. So at this point, you either have to finish the report and get it submitted so that this reimbursement request will go through, or for training purposes, I'm going to go back in here and just change the quarter, just so you can see. And hopefully that error will be gone. Expense date not within the quarter. And that's because now this date is not within quarter 5. So the last day of quarter 5 would be September 30th. So completing the step works a lot like check integrity. It's basically running the same function. It won't let you go on if there are any integrity issues. So I've taken care of my integrity problems. And then if I am the authorized representative, then I would just complete this. And so I would click on this and put my e-response keyword in and submit it, which I wrote down and have lost, so I'm not going to do that. But anyway, and then this, once you're complete, then the open book would show up. It would no longer be an X. And as soon as you do that, then the reimbursement request would show, the corresponding payment request would show up in Francine and Jenny's queue. Is it called the Dropbox or something like that? It goes to OPTIS, and then they check that every morning to see any new payment requests that have been created, and they go from there and process it.
So can you submit your quarter report and the reimbursement request concurrently all at the same time, or do you have
You have to do the quarterly report first, or you'll get that error message that you just saw.
Okay. Well,
But it could be the same.
well, yeah,
session that you're-
the same day.
Yeah.
Okay, so the quarter report doesn't need to be approved for you to go ahead and. Okay, perfect.
We don't really approve them. We look at them if there's something that doesn't make sense.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, there's.
check it.
Well, no, I've had that question before though. Who's looking at this, and do they have to be approved by public transit? And they don't. But we do look at them, and if we see something, that's when we would reopen it, forward it back to you, and have you correct it, like an ineligible expense or something.
And if we have to reopen for a correction, we don't have to redo the whole reimbursement request. We can just fix we can reopen that and fix the quarterly report and recomplete it, and the reimbursement and payment request will just sit there waiting until we're done. So you don't have to do a bunch of rework.
Yeah.